Well, yeah, thanks, Adam and Nick, for joining us. I think people probably know who we are from the last one, so might make sense just to do a quick hello, what you're up to, the kind of work that you're doing. Nick, do you want to go first?
Sure. So Nick Ritter, I do some cavalry tutorials on YouTube. I'm based in Utah in the US of A. And then for my career, I'm a commercial director, editor, and motion designer, kind of depending on the project. And sometimes I do all three of them.
Excellent. Adam?
Well, yeah, so I'm Adam Pyburn. I'm also US based in Durham on the East Coast of North Carolina. Yeah, I'm just a freelance motion designer. Been working in video production for about 15 years and have been specifically focused on motion design for about the past 6 to 7. So yeah, I'm just kind of a generalist, I would say.
Yeah, brilliant. So we've actually caught up with Nick on another call once before, but I guess the starting question, Adam, is what attracted you to cavalry in the first place? Really, what got you thinking that's worth a try?
Yeah, I think I started digging into Cinema 4D a couple of years ago, and was just really kind of coming from After Effects, really blown away kind of by the procedural nature of a lot of the things it can do natively and a lot of the plugins that were available for it. And I saw a lot of the same opportunity to kind of streamline more complex motion design in cavalry. So I was really excited to try it out, and yeah, it's been really fun to kind of experiment, and then also yeah, just being surprised by the things I'm able to do with it that were so hard in other programs that yeah, have definitely improved like just workflow in general. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've not had a chance to watch the video you just sent us, but I've obviously seen bits and pieces in conversations on Discord. Cool. That is amazing. I mean, it's without doubt the sort of the longest form piece of work we've seen, from anyone, even internally here. So yeah, congratulations on that.
Oh, thanks. I was hoping to share it a little bit sooner, but like, yeah, the approval just came in, so I didn't want to jump the gun on it, So hopefully that'll be out for me to share like an actual link to it in the next week or so for the wider audience.
Well, you got me curious now.
When Chris told me how big the scene file was that Adam had sent him, and I've never seen a scene file that size before, so yeah,
that was having fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we'll let you show that when you're ready, Adam. But yeah, it's really, really uplifting to see that kind of thing being produced. So yeah, thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sort of working through it in cavalry. Nick, you've obviously been fairly prolific in terms of doing tutorials, putting us to shame.
That was my goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just you seem to have a really good understanding of, how, lots of the app works already, and it feels like you've got a good sense of, the kind of mentality behind the app, I guess, how everything works and how everything connects together. Yeah, could you expand on that at all? Is that true?
I like to think so, and then I'll put up like a question or a feature request, and you guys are like, "Now hold on a second, we still know the software better than you." Nice way to keep my ego in check. But no, it's kind of what Adam was mentioning earlier. You pulled a lot from Cinema 4D in terms of like procedural workflows, and I got into Houdini a lot the last couple of years using that in motion graphics. And so I don't know, I think my mind was already kind of prepped to think systematically. And I think in cavalry you can work systematically, but you don't necessarily have to. Like you can go about things in a very manual way, maybe a little bit more like After Effects. But it's also useful, I think, to maybe get some experience working in node-based software, even something as simple as Blender, just kind of play around with their, I don't know, any of their nodes. They've got a ton of them now, especially
Yeah,
since they added the geometry ones.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. One of the things we set out when we started Cavalry was, we always want to be node based, but did we want that to be front and center right from the beginning? And really that's just around that. They can be quite intimidating, right? A full node editor and all the spaghetti that goes with it can be very difficult to kind of just get used to. It's a completely different mentality. So we went for that kind of layer stack thing. Obviously, as you know, we're looking to sort of bring a node editor in the future. But would you say that your kind of knowledge of working in, Houdini, use that as an example, obviously that's about the most node-based you can get in terms of applications. Would you say that really lent a hand in terms of your understanding of how Cavalry was expecting you to do things?
Yeah, I think so. And in particular in Houdini, it does take several nodes to accomplish something. So it forces you to quickly get over this fear of like adding more nodes and more mess to to your project. But I found the layered focus very helpful in terms of like coming from After Effects and getting started in the software. The node-based background came in handy, I think, when you start considering templates and connecting things, driving lots of animation with very little keyframes, especially where it's like opposite of the way the pick whip works, as far as like how you connect things together.
Yeah, tell this to do that rather than ask that what it's doing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
For us, we drag in the direction of the data flow. So for us, it's very node. The way the connections work in Cavalry is very node based. So you go, I'm taking the information from here, and I'm going to put that information over here. So that's the way that you drag. And I guess the pick whip's the other way around.
Yeah, which I think is more After Effects' fault than anyone's.
So Adam, that sort of segues on to this idea that you've done a fairly long form project. I think it's 1.5 minutes, the video that you produced. One of the things that I sometimes hit myself in Cavalry is as scenes get more and more complex with the layer system. We're obviously trying our best to make sure that it's easy to navigate. But I think when you've got a really complex scene, that's when the node graph's the node editor, is going to really come into its own. I just wondered, how did you get on with that with a kind of scene the size that you were working in?
That's a good question. I didn't really have any problems with the nodes, just because there's several places where you can check to see, what's going where. I was, definitely checking those little kind of yellow and purple dots a lot to make sure I knew what was going where. But I'm used to After Effects. I've been working in After Effects for 12 years, and so not knowing where stuff was is not. It doesn't keep me from doing stuff, So yeah, it was mainly just kind of thinking through each scene logically in a way where I had it mostly mapped out on paper before I even went into Cavalry. So really kind of getting organized before I even opened the program was probably, that's what I do anyway. So, I didn't really find any hindrance in using kind of a standard workflow. I think if anything, what was my kind of probably the biggest hurdle I found was as the complexity grew, as I had more layers and had more layers open at once in the scene window was lag. The more information going on, the more it lagged. So that was actually the main thing I came up with versus organization.
I'll guess at this, but I think that will be having a lot of UIs in your attribute editor. That sometimes slows down the UI. I don't know. Would that really
that happened? It was also just having a lot of layers open in the scene window itself too. I found it was increasing lag. The more layers were open on that side, the more keyframes were visible on my scene window. When I was going to do stuff, I saw a dramatic increase in lag based on how many things were open.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good to know. I think we've got some stuff coming up. Ian's been doing a lot in terms of just being able to sort of quickly isolate the things that you're interested in, which actually, while I'm there, leads me on to kind of tags. Actually, did you get to use the tag system at all in what you were doing?
I didn't. This was kind of a rushed project, so I kind of just had to, work with exactly what I needed at that moment. Just to kind of make sure I was getting stuff out on deadline. So I think I used the tag system a couple of times, but just I was brute forcing it, so it wasn't something that was totally necessary, and I wasn't really worried about this project going to anybody else. I was the only person working on this project, so I think if I was working on a team or something, that it would have definitely come in more handy.
Yeah, we're completely. There is a sort of an organizational overhead in terms of using tags and putting them together. But yeah, just I think that a scene of your scale, it would be sort of interesting to use that for organization, and just sort of clearing out scene window to just the 5 layers that are relevant to the particular thing you're doing at that time.
Yeah, that probably would have been way smarter than how
we sort of coined the phrase "shy on steroids" as our, when we were sort of building tags, with the idea that you can, in the way that you sort of put shy layers in After Effects, you can actually, you can have as many shy layers as you like in different categories with tags. But when you're in a rush, it's maybe not the way to go.
Right.
Adam's already had a sneak peek of the new shy U-mode combo that's coming in the next release. So another quick way to help you organize a scene. So.
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
Have you got some behind the scenes intel there, Adam? Have you?
Oh, yeah.
You need to check it's going to work right. So
Nick, what's next on your tutorial list then?
I was just figuring that out. So I just barely released a video this morning, diving into Cavalry from an After Effects perspective. So I go through and show like, hey, there's this panel in After Effects. Here's an equivalent in Cavalry, and here's how they take it one step further. So we'll see what the response is to that one. I'm trying to figure out like another series of videos, and maybe it's diving more into After Effects and showing like, here's an effect that I commonly use here, and then here's how I would do that in Cavalry.
Okay. Brilliant.
I don't know. Any suggestions?
Well, we've got a very long list that we haven't yet got round to. So, but yeah, obviously, really appreciate you putting those together. Ian more than me appreciates how much time goes into making a tutorial, and you seem to get some pretty good production values in what you're doing.
Yes, people seem to like them.
Yeah.
Ian's are pretty good.
Certainly not on the production value front.
Ian, we have either complaints that Ian talks too fast, or people who are very grateful that Ian talks fast, so you're not having the whole preamble, this is what I have for breakfast before the tutorial starts.
Sure.
That's what the
I've got a very slow, monotonous voice by default, so it encourages people, I think, to use the speed up option.
Yeah. Opportunity. Were there any kind of trip ups along the way in what you've been doing with Cavalry? Have you managed to use Cavalry in your production work at all so far?
This is still for me.
Yeah.
So I've tried it a couple of times on production work, and there's been a couple of, maybe just like one main issue that's kind of kept me from finishing those projects. So it's I think I made a suggestion on this in the Discord, but it's the option to flatten groups, so that when you add a deformer to it, it treats that group as like one entity. I find myself using that quite often in After Effects, where I use different null layers to parent, and pre-comping, and so
Yeah.
that's
So the idea that you might have several shapes under a group, but if you added a noise, each shape wouldn't get an individual noise, it would get a noise from all of them.
right.
I think we've solved this for 1.1. So yeah, I can't remember.
Okay.
Either Martin or myself made a tweak where you can now. There is a way to do that. So if you have a load of shapes under a group and then you add in a line, you can have everything in the group move. But I'll have to do a little video for you to show you how that happens in the beta. But it'll be in the next public release for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, looking forward to that. But like honestly, especially with the version of 1.1 that we've been playing around with, having like the tracking tools and the layout shape, and like those items are helping me use Cavalry in ways that After Effects cannot, which makes it, you know, really interesting and more of a mainstay kind of tool.
Yeah,
especially for me, I try to use a non-Adobe workflow for my personal work.
Yeah, the responsive thing is something we've been talking to various sort of presentations we've been doing, and yeah, that's sort of one of the standout things that sticks out for a lot of people, is that overhead of having to do something at 250 by 250 at 300 by 250 at, you know, as a sort of tower, whatever it might be. If you're into sort of banner ads and those sorts of things, then managing all those assets can be very challenging. So the fact that we've got, well, constraints obviously one thing, but then the layout stuff, as you've been playing with in the current beta, yeah, it's really powerful for that side of things. Just quickly iterate through stuff, hook it up with the data, fire out, you know, however many versions
it's
you
great
need
for UIs. Like at my job, we do a lot of phone screens, a lot of websites. So it's, you know, perfect use case for that.
Yeah. And obviously the sorry, I'm sounding like a sales pitch now, but the vector side of it is, you know, the fact that all those things just can scale, and there is no kind of raster, anything to worry about in terms of resolution. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I forget the question you asked by now.
Yeah, I think it was
See if I've answered it.
Oh yeah, in terms of hiccups, obviously that the kind of group thing that Ian has apparently already solved.
Mm-hmm. Which happens a lot, by the way. Anyone else watching this, they jump on these things like that.
Yeah, it's great actually, because you know, the Discord's kind of slowly starting to become a bit more self-managing, in that, you know, the likes of yourself are kind of wading in with answers to questions, and you know, we absolutely love seeing that. It's you know, wake up in the morning thinking, that's already been answered, brilliant. You know, it sort of takes a big overhead off us, and obviously just, you know, it just means that people are kind of understanding the app and able to share that knowledge. You know, that's what we need. We need a community of people who know it and can teach others, right? That's how all these apps gain traction.
Yeah, well, it's a good community in the Discord too. Like everyone's just super understanding, and it's all about like, all right, let's just learn this thing, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very non-toxic. We're liking that.
I can chime in with some other things that, in terms of incorporating Cavalry more into production, would be handy. I think one thing I do a lot of work in is making templates, but also just making work that will be on top of someone else's footage in the kind of in-use case. So, and y'all might have already taken care of this, but having a ProRes with alpha export would be super handy. I was also thinking, and maybe I just haven't noticed this, or maybe I haven't toggled this on, but having layer index numbers in the scene window Is that something y'all have talked about? Because sometimes I'm like, oh, which number layer am I looking for? So I think that could be handy for, and I'm not sure that I've done much with using like the scene window layer order.
That's interesting. So is that more in your head? Is that more of a kind of a navigation thing? Like, that this is at about 30 layers deep, therefore.
Yeah, sometimes I'll have like several layers that might have similar names, and maybe that's just like kind of one more way to think through organizing. Then also in terms of thinking through, if JavaScript or some kind of scripting gets more built into Cavalry, being able to select stuff and organize stuff in coding by the layer number could be really handy.
Yeah, so just
maybe I'm getting too far ahead of myself.
No, not at all. Ian, you can probably talk to scripting a bit more, can't you, as to where we are? And
yeah, we have, like After Effects, I think After Effects has this. It's been a while since I've done scripting in there, but each layer has a unique name behind the scenes, which is how you'd refer to it in terms of scripting. The layer numbers thing is interesting because obviously we have a hierarchy. So would the layer numbers be top to bottom, or would, as you go into the hierarchy, would it start over again, or would it just be a cumulative kind of like literally a visual order?
Clearly, I haven't thought through this very much on my
But honestly, the fact that we have a hierarchy causes so many headaches, and it's so many benefits as well. The fact that you could just fold up a whole group of layers, and then suddenly you've got this nice organization. But at the same time, it then introduces lots of other issues as well. So like that. So
right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was just audio, the use of audio. Especially it was a little bit tricky working on this most recent project that I shared with y'all. There's really no way to move where the audio is. So adapting to that was a little bit of a challenge. But then, just timing stuff to audio in general could be a lot easier if there's some more options there. So
yeah, I completely empathize with that. We've got there are more, but we've got kind of 6 or 7 kind of big either missing features or bugs with audio that are all part of one story that we want to tackle fairly soon.
Cool. Can you elaborate on what might be in the next big release?
Well, in terms of sound for the next stuff, we're not really too on top of that right now. We might sneak something in for 1.1. But yeah, even just the not being able to kind of offset the sound is something that I hit myself, when playing with it. So yeah, can fully empathize with that one. But yeah, thank you for persevering.
And just like exporting with audio would be huge, because then that makes me be able to do full projects in Cavalry without having to do any kind of external compositing or external adding of audio. So that would be huge.
Here's a big question for you, Adam. Do you feel that doing the project that you've just showed us was going in Cavalry was the right decision?
I do. I would say mainly because of the constraints of the kind of brand guidelines. They're like very much grid based, very kind of vector focused style. So I relied heavily on being able to specify what the grid was and snapping to the grid, and then also just the ideas I had for how I wanted to visualize some of the concepts. I wouldn't have been able to do them, at least in budget, in any other program, especially not as easily. So that I think, no regrets.
Thank you. I just realized how risky that question was after I asked it.
Well, you could always edit it out.
Nick, have you played with audio much? Obviously it's you can do some really fun stuff with audio and Cavalry. Just the fact that you're not having to bake anything out; it's all live and ready to go. Have you played with it much?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
While Adam was talking about it, I was like, maybe I should get my hands wet with audio. But yeah, I did. So I was looking at my notes here. I did remember another thing that I found that keeps getting in my way. I'm not sure how solvable this is. So it's a way to animate an element, so like a shape or text or something, based on the size dimensions of itself.
Explain.
So currently, you can use. I've been using align to kind of automate that. So I would just align it from the right side of the object to the left if I want to animate it in from the left, or you know top to bottom if I want to animate it up or down. And that allows it to animate a given distance based on how wide that layer is. So having a flat group will help with this. But if I use bounding box, bounding box doesn't let you like loop into itself.
Yeah.
So which makes sense to me, because then you would get a shape that just like slowly goes off the screen or or exponentially. So because you attach the shape data into the bounding box node, and then the bounding box node spits out like width or position data or height data. And so it'd be nice to attach that into like a position blend, or
yeah, okay.
another kind of attribute.
These are Nick. These are the questions that I ask Ian all the time. He's good at answering these things.
Well, it's an interesting one. We could definitely do, but the reason that the bounding box doesn't like that is because it depends on the position of an object, and it's then if you're going to then feed that back in, it causes a cycle which it doesn't like. So what we could do is have a version of the bounding box utility that is only interested in the size, not the position. So not where the bounding box is, but just how big it is, how wide and how tall it is. And that would mean that we wouldn't end up in a cycle when you attach it to something and then try to move the position of it based on itself and all that kind of thing. So
Sure.
that would be a way to kind of, if we split those out, then we could easily do that. And that's, it's 10 minutes work to add that. So it's a great request. That's the kind of thing that if you ask them Discord, you get a video back 10 minutes later saying, just added it for you, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you.
Great. So have we managed to fix all of Nick's problems then?
Yeah, the issues I've been running into so far, probably. I mean, there's obviously ideas for where I would love to see it go and everything, but I'm not sure if that's what this video is for.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. What's on your wish list?
Well then,
what's the top 3, top 5 on your wish list?
I have those starred actually. So I would actually love to see more, and I think 1.1 does a great job at pushing shapes forward. I would love to see more Illustrator or Houdini like shape building capabilities, but a way to do it procedurally.
You're talking about the literally the shape builder in Illustrator, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the shape builder, and then how you can like do the path intersections and to help create the shapes, but to do so procedurally in the way that Houdini does, where if I need to go back and change the original rectangle, then I still have that option. I even with After Effects, I don't like going to Illustrator to make my graphics most of the time. If I can do it just in the app, ready to animate, then that's my personal ideal. Some Illustrator fans might have different opinions, but
I mean that's one of our ambitions. Ian and another developer called Ed have been doing a lot of work in that world, and we're taking sort of gradual steps forward, but a lot of work going into that. the procedural side of it is obviously just a natural fit for what we're doing. So yeah, very much on our minds as well.
Yeah,
Cool.
I've actually done some R&D on a kind of shape builder style thing in Cavalry, but early days. So no promises, but yeah, I've looked into
So
it.
looks like it'll be part of a future someday.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Cool. The next one would be dynamics that interact procedurally.
Yeah.
Again, like another thing that Houdini is fantastic at, but to get some 2D physics, like rigid body simulations, even some like liquid or smoke might be a little overkill. I don't know a 2D use case where I'd need smoke, but yeah, and I know
No,
dynamics
Adam,
is like its own rabbit hole.
Yeah, we know the dynamics world pretty well, just from previous projects and previous work. So yeah, that's been on our list for a while, and we'd really love to tackle it. Yeah, there's just so much to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Adam Jens, who's off screen, is nodding furiously at dynamics as well. That's his favourite.
Particle system as well. Really keen on having a particle
Yes.
system. I mean, obviously we've kind of got a procedural particle system, but you know, there's. I mean, we've been scoping behind the scenes the start of that. You know how in Houdini there's points and things, and you can do various things with the points. So obviously we have something similar with the duplicator, but we actually want to turn this into more. Something even more of a base layer in points, so that you can have, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of these things, which we can then turn into particles and have no kind of runtime problems with that. So, you know, playing back at real time with tens of thousands of particles in Cavalry, that's where we want to go with this stuff. Yeah, we've got lots of good ideas. We just need to get to them.
Yeah, yeah, this stuff takes a lot of time. I do feel a little bad when I bring up ideas like this, because I'm like, they already have their hands full, but I appreciate the so the ability to promote attributes on a containing composition. So currently when there's a comp and you import it into the project, if you double click on it, it opens that comp rather than letting you like mess with the attributes. And it looks like Ian was going to say something about that.
Well, yeah, we kind of, so there is a little workaround for that. You can drag the composition into the attribute editor, which will load its UI in there.
Okay.
But the other thing is that we have added a window recently that you can promote controls to from any composition, and that window is available everywhere. So if you promote a control into this window, it just exists in that window. So if you then move into a different comp, the window still contains the control from the other comp. So you can, promote. It's basically a scene rig, so it's a rig for your whole scene. So the important controls you can put in there. So that's something that's coming in the next release.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think I'm thinking of it in terms of templates, since that's one of I think it's one of Cavalry's strong suits, or it's a template where it doesn't require that it's integrated with other software. It just works on its own. And so if there's like a prepackaged composition that someone could like purchase on Envato or something, and it's got all of the necessary controls just right on the top level.
Yeah, right. So that's so kind of I don't know what the term is in Houdini, but in Maya they were called assets, where you could basically take a graph and then bottle it all up into a nice little one UI and have that with your promoted controls. So that is on our roadmap as components, and we already have the format done. It's about half finished behind the scenes in terms of the UI. We had some work done recently to enable us to finish that, but it's actually got bumped down the list by presets. So presets has usurped it, and so presets will come first, and then these will come after that. So
that sounds like the correct order to me.
Yeah, presets is the idea with presets is just drag it in and something exciting's in your scene. Whereas, what you're referring to, Nick, we're sort of calling components behind the scenes, but tools, assets by any other name in other applications.
Cool. Yeah, that's it. And so that leads into my next thought, which was custom shelf tools. But it sounds like that's kind of in this presets world that you guys are already working on.
Actually, the custom shelf stuff would more be in the scripting world, which is the release after the one that we're working on now. So the release after that, that's the one that we intend to get to grips with the scripting and SDKs and things like that. So yeah, that would more work on that front. So you'd be able to build a script that ran some commands or whatever, ran a preset, whatever, and then put that in the shelf. Which, yeah, actually, you know what? We might do it a different way. I'm saying these things. We've not had a formal conversation about it. It's just some, Martin and I messaging each other or whatever. But yeah, we can certainly do something so that you can have custom items in your shelf. So actually, having a separate shelf would be good at some point as well, because at the moment our shelf is mixed in with our tool settings, and some of the tool settings are getting quite long. So we'll probably need to split those out at some point. But yeah.
That'd be really interesting. It would make sense that it would fit into scripting. And then the last thing in this top, how many is this list? Top 5 list is having something like a layout blend would be really nice.
Interesting. Okay, so are you talking about the new layout features? So you've got a vertical layout and a horizontal layout, and you want to blend between them?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that the blend sub-mesh positions behavior will do that already. I'm saying this, I've never tried it. Has anyone tried this?
I tried something with the submesh. I couldn't get it to work, but again, Ian knows the software better than I do.
It's a beta feature actually, so it's worth trying. That one's worth trying. So blending between 2 different layouts. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Nick, that's a slightly different node. That's a blend submesh positions rather than the submesh. Is that's right, Ian? That's what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The blend, it's a node called blend submesh positions.
Yeah.
I'll give it a go for you, Nick, and send you a scene if it works.
Great. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Chris can be like the canary in the mine. See.
Nick, can I interrupt if you've got any more and let Adam give us his top feature requests?
Ready for me to rattle off a few?
Yeah.
All right. More fall off shapes and controls would be really fun. I think I'm really used to kind of being able to go wild in cinema, especially I use the graph in Cavalry to kind of accomplish some of that stuff, but having some UI to show like fall offs within the fall off, if that makes sense. So that was one that's on my list.
That includes shapes, so shapes of the fall off, so things like an arc rather than say the radial fall off, things like that as well.
Yeah, and like a cube where you can control 100% to 0% visually, I guess. So just I guess more like visual controls for that to make it a little bit easier to implement stuff, faster to implement fall offs.
So, sorry, Adam. That's kind of in viewport controls, basically, right? So you can drag something. Yeah.
Right. So like for instance, a linear would have like multiple places where you could drag to change. You would essentially be changing the I guess graph curve.
Yeah.
But visually.
Yeah. Totally understand. Yeah.
We want the same thing for gradients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I've mentioned something about the radial gradient to Ian before, and it sounds like y'all are on top of that. More graph editor controls, which I think y'all are already, it's probably on the roadmap, but like being able to have maybe link percentages to graph editors and having some kind of panel to control, copying and pasting curves in the graph editor would be really cool. And being able to save curves. I know flow is very popular in After Effects, and I mean, not only being able to save, but being able to share would be a cool functionality. I don't know how you do that, but that'd be really cool.
We should be pretty close to that actually, because we can copy animation curves. So maybe we just need to make it so that you can, well, because you can copy them between scenes, can't you? Maybe we just need to formalize that format so that you can have a folder full of them, and we find those and let you click on them to apply them or something.
Yeah, and then I also have a plugin in After Effects where it basically has a 0 to 100%, and I can drag that and it'll change the curve just with a slider, which I find is just really handy, because then I can set that slider to a certain curve and then select my curves and just click a button and it applies it. Yeah, it's just for me, it's a way that I find it easy to wrap my head around, and maybe that's just like a personal thing, but
getting some presets in there is really cool. We actually back in the really early beta days for Cavalry, so going back nearly 3 years now, we did have a bunch of presets for the graph editor, and they fell off at some point, and we've never got them back, and we really, we should make the effort to get them back. So yeah, it's a really good shout. We do need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I rely heavily on the magic eases, but yeah, just having a little bit more control over the magic eases would be awesome. A color palette, a little bit more control over the color palette would be really fun. Like being able to reorder some of the swatches and stuff, and just being able to change the size. And I think this is also something I mentioned. But I was in the project that I was working on, I was able to resize or just kind of reconfigure my entire layout so that I could stretch out and have a larger color palette. So I made that work, but
you had a huge color palette, didn't you? So yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 100 colors or something like that.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And then I'm not going to say this right, but dropping multiple shapes, like having some kind of control where, like, let's say I have kind of some random unique shapes scattered around the screen, and I want to be able to use fall-offs and controls that I have access to in a duplicator, but I don't want to put those onto a grid or anything else. Like I want to lay them out and then put them into a duplicator and have them stay in the same spot, but then have all those controls. So I'm not sure what that would be called.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned that, but yeah, that would be really cool.
That's a great shout. At the moment, you can only do it with there's an array distribution or something where you can put in your own positions, but that is a very cumbersome way of achieving this. So having something where you can just set something up and then click a button and then it's magically there's an initial state set for you. That's great. That's the dream. That'd be good.
Right, and I mean, you can kind of get around that by just putting it in a group, but you can't do the same kind of fall off stuff with just a group. So
that's a great shout.
Yeah, and then we've already talked about audio. I think the audio is a big one for me. So that's pretty much all I got. I'm sure I'll think of other stuff, but I'll drop it in Discord.
What you just mentioned there, Adam's kind of really interesting because it's that sort of fight sometimes with proceduralism, which is great and amazing because it does magic things and really quickly. But yeah, when you want to get down to that kind of nitty gritty, I actually want this thing to be exactly there. That's sometimes the fight with procedural workflows, isn't it? With the that kind of switch to manual side of things, you do need that. Yeah,
totally.
I've got a rather forced question for you. Is anyone interested in Lottie?
I don't know what that is.
I am, though I haven't really used Lottie, but I'm interested in Lottie in general. Maybe I would be more inclined to get into it if it was part of Cavalry.
So yeah, Ian and one of the other devs has been doing a lot of work on that behind the scenes here. And well, I might just quickly show you. Actually, we might just do a little use this as a little reveal, and Nick, you can learn what Lottie is.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get into UI stuff, UI animations this year. So yeah, definitely love to see that incorporated.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
So this very, very simple animation, but this was actually kind of stolen from a newsletter that Monzo sent me. I don't know if you guys have Monzo in the States. It's a bank here, but so yeah, I've just set up the animation in Cavalry. You can see we've got nulls, so we're supporting kind of the hierarchies. We've got little things, you know, like rounded corners, and we've got magic easing is sort of popping these coins up and things like that. And then really it's as simple as you just export Lottie. And you can see my terrible desktop. Just call this Monzo. And then basically that's given us a Lottie file, and we can just test that on Lottie Files website. And there you go, that's done. And obviously the beauty of these, Nick, if you're not familiar with this world, is that, you know, that animation is now 23 kilobytes.
Holy cow.
And obviously completely
awesome.
vector, scalable, you can put it anywhere you like now on a website.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Is that going to be in 1.1?
Yeah, I think we'll put it, there's well, there's more to kind of reveal on this. Ian's been doing lots of work. It's quite interesting trying to get deformers working, and you know, what is a deformer? Lottie doesn't really know what a deformer is, so we're sort of teaching it. But yeah, this will be in 1.1, probably behind the beta flag, but as you can see here, it's in a pretty operational state.
How many bugs Chris finds?
Yeah. It's been an interesting format to work with.
This looks really cool. I don't do a lot of website animation in my day-to-day, but man, yeah, it just looks really useful.
You can do things like, so we use a product, our current website's built on a tool called Webflow. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but in Webflow, you can embed Lottie files, and you can really quickly and easily kind of hook them up to scroll, you know, so as you scroll, the animation happens. It's so easy. So yeah, we're really quite excited about this, just in terms of, yeah, the Lottie sort of, I say naturally sits in, as I say, it's been quite an interesting format to work with, but you know, the fact that we are just completely shaped behind the scenes, it's a natural progression to kind of move into this animation for web story, as we're calling it.
Well, so one particular use case I see with this is like, we do a lot of animations, and then I have to export out a GIF or a GIF, and then they put it onto the website. But this is such a cool way to just procedurally have, you know, the one animation and just spit out all the files you need.
Well, then it's vector based too, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So you're not worrying about like different resolutions and
right.
Yeah, and in terms of emailing that file, it's 23 kilobytes. You know, so it's
wow. Is there an ability to import Lottie animation too?
Not yet.
No. Not yet, no. But that's well, Ian, is that on the way? I don't know. You've had it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways we can do it. It depends. It'd be very easy for us to add the ability to just play a Lottie file in Cavalry. Like, you know, when you import an SVG, it's an SVG, and if you want to edit it, then you've got to make it editable. We could do something similar to that very quickly. But if we want to bring a Lottie file in, and then we kind of decompose it into all its keyframes and things, so you can then edit the Lottie file and then re-export it again, that's more work. So yeah, when we get a spare week, we can add something like that if it's of interest.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, sort of shove that down your throat. I guess, yeah, we're sort of a little bit over time now. Is there anything else that you guys had on your mind that you wanted to sort of bring up while we're here?
I don't think so. I think one other thing that just came to mind that would be a cool to have, but not a deal breaker, would just more file import capabilities. So like being able to bring in an MP4 and have it kind of play without fuss, and be able to, you know, move it around on a timeline. Being able to turn off and on the audio and video kind of independently on other files.
Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of more compatibility with more file types would be cool. But again, it's like not a deal breaker.
No, yeah, we're very conscious of that, and actually, the kind of the technicals behind implementing those things are not too great. It's just all the edge cases around, you know, what particular flavor of MP4 is that one. It's that side of things that we just need to be a bit careful with.
MP4s are crazy.
Yeah.
One thing that might be useful for me to bring up, so like anyone who's watching this that's like newer to Cavalry, I just like the documentation is actually really useful. So, and I appreciate that from you guys. I know there's some things that are like incomplete or whatever, but I think all the really important stuff is on there and it's clear, and there's examples to follow to try it out. And like, so Cavalry as a community is really nice to get into, and like the dev team, you guys, I think have made it easier than you had to make it to start grasping the tools and the interface, and even when it comes to making suggestions and things, you guys are just open to listening to it at the very least. So anyway, it's a worthwhile endeavor to pick up Cavalry.
Oh,
yeah, the support and documentation was totally invaluable for, you know, especially in production for the video that I did. But yeah, just like Nick said, as a community, it's been really, really fun.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you both so much for that. Yeah, I mean, documentation, not the most exciting sort of topic in the world, but you know, it's evolving pretty quickly. And you know, if you do see anything missing, obviously let us know. Or if there's a page that doesn't tell you really what you need to know, then yeah, I'm going to drop a hint in Discord. We can have that done in 5 minutes usually.
I'll toot your horn here, Chris. In the same way that I fix bugs, you add examples of the documentation. It's very good.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate your time. Great to hear you getting on with Cavalry, obviously, and you know, long may this journey continue.
Well, thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you both.
Yeah, thanks. Good to meet y'all. Take care.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya.